Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar put on by the Streaming Video Alliance called Advertising and the Video Experience. We've got a great discussion for you today from some real experts in online video advertising and sort of giving their thoughts on where they think it's going, what the problems are, how to solve some of those challenges, what are the best practices, et cetera, et cetera. A couple of housekeeping things before we kick this off. One is this will be recorded. So at the end of the webinar, usually about an hour after it finishes, the recording will get processed and you'll receive an email with a link to that recording. So if you have any colleagues or friends who couldn't attend, you can just forward them that email and they can listen in on their own. We also publish it on YouTube and on the streamingvideoalliance.org website as well. A couple of brief points on the Streaming Video Alliance. If you're unfamiliar with the organization, we are a global association that's focused on helping spur and improve and drive the adoption of online video. And that's done through best practices and guidelines and specifications and functional requirements around addressing the challenges that many companies face in delivering a broadcast-like experience online. You can find out more about us at the streamingvideoalliance.org. I am Jason Tebow, the Executive Director of the Streaming Video Alliance, and today I am joined by four really smart people. That's Olivia Wellman from Conviva, Jens Loeffler from Adobe, Jesper Persson from Nice People at Work, and Morad Kamuji from Sky. And what we're going to do before we kick off into the discussion around video advertising and streaming video and sort of what that experience is like and how do we make it better, I'm going to let our esteemed panelists introduce themselves. So why don't we start off with Olivier? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of what Conviva does in the advertising space and anything else you think the audience might appreciate.
Hey, thanks, Jason. I'm Olivier Wellman. I'm the VP of Product here at Conviva, look after the Conviva product. And Conviva is one of the leading QoE and user engagement platform. So we collect a lot of data on many applications and do real-time processing in order to use the data for a number of purposes. For instance, is the quality goods, both for the content and on the advertising side. So that's what we do.
Fantastic. Let's move on to Jens from Adobe.
Hey, Jens Loeffler. I'm Principal Technical Evangelist in Adobe's M&E / Primetime team. I've been working for many years in the media entertainment space, way over a decade now. Going through many of the iterations of initial deployments of online video in the early days to where we are now with OTT and moving a lot of this premium experiences to direct-to-consumer offering. Specifically, a lot of focus around ad insertion, ad monetization. We've done a lot of really large-scale events with our solution, and I'm happy to share a couple of those insights that we learned from those in this panel.
Fantastic. Thank you. And then Jesper Persson from Nice People at Work.
Yeah, so my name is Jesper Persson. I'm the Technical Director for North America for NPA, or Nice People at Work. And I've got a decade's worth of experience from the media industry, working with broadcasters and publishers in different roles. And what MPA does, we're the provider of Ubora, which is a BI platform with a focus on the video experience and analytics. And in addition to just focusing in on the quality of service and the quality of experience, we're also really looking at how that affects engagement. And this is, of course, super important when we're looking at advertising as well. So in addition to looking at the ad quality and being able to collect that data from the different devices, we're also looking at how that quality of service or that quality of experience is actually affecting engagement, which is of course super important for both of our clients. Thank you.
Fantastic. And then our last panelist, Morad from Sky. Can you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, my name is Murad, and I'm a solutions architect who works predominantly in VOD and in the OTT space. Sky is a pan-European broadcaster across 5 territories with around about 20 million subscribers, and that's basically viewable across OTT devices as well as your TV services and your set-top boxes. We operate a traditional TV business as well as an OTT SVOD services across Europe, including Now TV and Sky Go. But we also run our own advertising sales unit called Sky Media, which operates across 150 channels and sells advertising for Sky and for other parties. And we have some leading Ad Smart services, which is a personalized ad service that helps target households at a granular level. So yeah, we are very focused on pay TV and advertising as well.
Fantastic. Wow, it's a really great, collection of different opinions on this panel. I think it's going to be a really exciting discussion. So why don't we kick it off with something that's a little bit high level, right? Obviously, one of the genesis of this panel was around this concept of the impact of advertising on the video experience, right? So, what happens when, for example, what happens when video advertisements are of poor quality? And I'm not talking about the content quality itself, like it's a really bad advertisement. I'm talking about what happens if it stutters or jitters or there's a bitrate issue. What is the impact of poor video advertising quality on the overall streaming experience?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump right in. So this is Jens here from Adobe. Yeah, I think the obviously the direct impact you have is in the audience that you're trying to retain during the event. So if you have poor video advertisement experiences, in the worst case, you're losing basically, you have a drop-off in users. But I think just in general, I think there's this balance that you have to strike between a real premium experience and the complexity of the advertisement ecosystem. So as an example, programmatic advertisement sources versus first-party data sources or video advertisement sources, and how do you make sure that, let's say you have a live event that everyone gets just a great user experience. So there's definitely a couple of best practices you can follow. But I think this should be, the #1 concern for everyone who wants to go direct to consumer, to make sure you really are fulfilling the promise of a broadcast-like experience when you're running on an advertisement.
Yeah, exactly. This is Jesper from Ampa here. Something that, like, the short-term impact is, of course, you're going to lose the audience, that specific view if the user has especially if you have a long join time. But also if the general experience is poor, you might lose that view. But also it's important to remember that you're going to have an impact on your long-term brand. You don't want to, especially if you're using, as you were referring to, like third-party ads, you're no longer in control of that. And if you want to be perceived as a quality brand, then as a publisher, then of course it's important that is an experience that goes through your whole the whole video view, not only the content but also the ad view.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a I think on the video quality, one thing that is very critical is to be able to quantify what the impact would be of poor advertising quality. So I think there's two numbers here I want to quote based on what Conviva has seen globally. The first thing is 1% change in the quality of experience in buffering is going to decrease the video views by 16 minutes. And we've seen that number consistently increasing since 2011. So that's very critical impact. And the second number is abandonment level. What's an abandonment level? An ad break abandonment level? And we've seen across the board, both in Europe and in the US, that about 12.5% of people never make the end of the ad. So that's what we call the abandonment level, which is, when you think about it, that's an average number, so that number can go much higher or lower. About half of that number is due to QoE issues. And if you really think about it, 2.5, that means that you're losing more than 10% of your audience every time you're putting an ad. That's quite significant. So, two numbers, those are obviously averages. They'll vary, from a case to case and time, depending on lots of factors. But, to keep in mind in order to be able to quantify, what this all means.
Yeah, I think adding to what the gentleman already added, I mean, as a publisher, what we find is our audience has come to us to watch a particular piece of content, even that's from Sky or for someone else. And what we always say and try and do is that an advert should complement the main video program and not interrupt it anywhere. So, and if we fail in doing that, what we're doing is we're failing our audience who've come to get a service ultimately. So it's customer dissatisfaction, which is the highest thing we try and avoid, because as we all know, it's a competitive market out there, and if a customer has paid to watch a service and then unfortunately due to a incorrect serve advert that stops that main experience, then unfortunately we're gonna maybe not have that customer for a long time. So our goal is to make sure that advertisement is needed, of course, but it doesn't inhibit the main viewing experience, and that's our main goal here as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So I have a question, a follow-up question to that. If there is an impact, and it sounds like there is, it sounds like you guys are all agreeing that there is a definite impact, a negative impact of poor video advertising quality on the overall streaming experience. What can content publishers do to ensure that their video ads are of the highest quality? Is it really just a matter? It can't just be a matter of bit rate, right? There has to be other components involved as well. What do you guys think about that?
I'll start by saying you're right. Sorry, I thought, because this is quite close to my heart, and I think we deal with this all the time. So if I split it into many things, so first, obviously, there's the picture video quality itself, and you're right, that's one problem we face. And then the other one is how do you work with other advertised sellers, and how to make sure that when you acquire this content is actually acquired in the right way, and that what they're giving you is to be displayed. So put that in real terms, there's a delivery of it as well. And so what we do a lot is we have a massive team that looks at onboarding any content to our platform. Now, onboarding is basically very similar to main content. We ensure that the advert video itself is of a high quality. We make sure that all the metadata associated with it is correct, and that it's actually delivered to us at a good video picture, because garbage in, garbage out. You start with a poor quality image to begin with. Ultimately, you can have a blurry picture at the other end. So that's the first thing. But the other challenge is to make sure that when you actually serve the video to our end users, that we serve it in the same way. Now, I'm talking about, in this case, broadcast television. Of course, satellite is quite robust and secure, and fair enough, it's stable. But when you start delivering across the open internet, then we all have a massive set of complications. So unfortunately, sometimes with third-party submission, we don't know where the video is being hosted, we don't know where it's come from, and that results in a few problems, because ultimately, if we can't guarantee, or at least try and guarantee the delivery of that video, then we have a problem to our end users, it's us that pay. So we always make sure that we serve the video from our CDN providers, so we know it's a high quality throughput. But more importantly, we have to make sure that little things, like we're talking about duration here, is supplied correctly. And all of a sudden, we've had ad creative supplied to us in the past where it's 5-second longs destined for a 10-second campaign. So that adds more complications, and then we have blank for the end user. So there's a lot of human effort here, as well as good practice to make sure that the partners you do work with adhere to standards, and standards is quality of the audio as well as the video. But more importantly, that if you are dealing with third parties that you don't have direct control of it, then put them through a very good QC process all the way to the end as well. And we talked about hosting it as well. And I feel that once you address those two pieces of the puzzle, then we can talk about how we can optimize it further. But that's what we do behind the scenes a lot to ensure the quality of our video, of our adverts are given to our end users.
Those are great points, and
yeah.
I'd like. Sorry. Yeah. So that is some great points there, and of course, it always comes back to like, okay, how do you know that you are delivering a great quality? I mean, one of the additional things that is required is, of course, some way to measure quality and agreed upon standards, so you can actually compare between your different ad providers and things like that. So getting the good analytics when it comes to all these quality metrics that I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about here, like join times, buffer ratios, skip rates, etc., are super important, because otherwise, how do you actually know that what you're doing is working? And in addition to that, being able to provide or run A/B tests or multivariate tests on your comparing different ad creatives, campaigns, different providers, and things of that nature. Because even when you have that data, it's also, you need to be able to understand the differences between different types of platforms and your different parts of your audience. I mean, consumers of what we've seen at MPAWS, users of Android devices are a lot less patient than users on iOS devices, for example. It's something to keep in mind. Whenever you're measuring this, you have to keep in mind that your audience might be very fragmented. Very important to be able to measure, because you can't really master what you can't measure.
I would add another dimension to this too. It's specifically around live events. So this becomes specifically challenging in environments where you really have only one chance to be successful with the ad delivery. So I think I want to mirror a lot of those recommendations, making sure that the input source is high quality. Use your own CDN. I think I would add to that too. If you use a multi-CDN setup, map the ads to the content CDN too. So let's say you have 1 million users or more watching a live event. If you do a CDN switch just for the ad, that could be catastrophic to a degree that you might run out of capacity on one CDN. So there's a lot of those best practices. Obviously, the trends coding piece, again, the source needs to be high quality, but also if you have a live event, you often don't have the time, or you don't have the time to do just-in-time transcoding. So you need to do pre-processing of the ads to match the quality. In a VOD scenario, one way to overcome some of those limitations that you would have in a third-party advertisement coming from programmatic sources is to do just-in-time transcoding. So basically normalizing this on request and looking at audio levels and a lot of those different things. So we've done things for VOD specifically around that too. That works. At least you have some sort of security layer in between the ad provider and your experience. But yeah, I think especially in the live scenario, if you do one mistake and you have the wrong ad, the wrong format, it might break the whole experience for you. So definitely spending time on optimizing this, I think, is really critical.
Mm. Yeah, I like the garbage in, garbage out, and the complexity here. There's a lot of complexity. A lot of things can go wrong. And so, one side that we've been working on at Conviva is, really the system, the analytics system has all the data. It knows, it understands the CDN. It has all the user experience information and is able to work it backwards. But there is so much data that it's very difficult to, what you're going to put an alert on everything. I mean, it's going to be almost impossible. So our view, our principle is that the system has to tell you what's going, what's wrong, where is it breaking, how can I improve, and that's why we've introduced what we call the AI alert system, and we're bringing that to advertising as well, where the system scans and then finds oh, there's a problem with your frame rate here. Oh, the resolution has an issue. Oh, the bitrate, oh, the CDN in this location is breaking for this specific ad. So there's, because there's an avalanche of data today. We all want to look at, all of it. We want to, have, but it's almost virtually impossible to grasp it if the system doesn't tell you what is going wrong and what is going well.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, the amount of times we've been through the amount of monitoring stacks to work out why our users complaining, and that's where it normally happens here. I mean, I love the guys from Nice People on Work and Conviva because they try and solve these problems in advance by alerting us publishers when there is a problem. But sometimes, and most of the time, we find out when people complain, or we see a dropout somewhere, and we go, "Oh, why is there a dropout here?" So the investigation prone, basically, you got to understand what you're doing, and it's true. It's not just in one place. It could be 1,000 of places, and we've been there looking through logs, going through why is this actually happening, and it always comes down to one simple thing. So, I suppose to resonate what everyone was saying, it's not just one place. It's complex, and you do need data supporting when things go wrong, and you have to know where to look, really, and that goes to having good people in place as well. I mean, you're not going to achieve this with one person here. I mean, we're talking about people dedicated to this and actually understand what's happening underneath the hoods. I mean, and lucky enough, we're large enough to absorb that, but yeah, I can't stress how data is key to help you as well. Yeah, definitely.
And I think there's one aspect here to what Murad just saying is that advertising and QA and advertising is more complex than on the content side because of programmatic, because of the way advertising has been delivered, because you need more data, you do need VAS, you need VPaid, you need VMAF, you need all those additional information to be able to pinpoint to where the issue may lie, and so advertising and the identification of issues around video advertising is actually more complex than what has been done on the content side. So just because of the sheer amount of data that needs to be collected.
I would say that I 100% agree with the data and having insight, but also the complexity, just to underline this, there's a lot of different ways of running ads, and especially I think you mentioned VPaid, which I think is really a big problem currently, and I think there's a little bit backslash on that already happening. But the obviously with JavaScript-based VPaid ads, there's so much variance in that execution that it really becomes really challenged to track down really problematic VPaid ad providers, because basically you can do it whatever you want to within those ad units. So I think it's probably a balance between filtering the sources, so not relying on just a third party sending any kind of ads into the system, having really solid understanding of the data and the analytics, and then sort of shaping it so you reduce basically the amount of the variance for your customer experience, so you don't run into the ad broke the whole experience. Maybe finding different levels to at a minimum fallback if you detect something that's problematic, and maybe go with maybe a burned-in ad or maybe a safe ad. So detecting this in real time, I think, is also a key piece.
Okay, so one of the things that I think everyone touched on in answering that last question was this concept of data and measurement. That needs to happen. It's difficult. So I'm going to ask the hard question, right? I'm going to ask how should video ad quality be measured, right? What are some of the KPIs that publishers should know about, that distributors should know about? What are some of those things that they should be measuring? Who wants to jump on that one first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. And so there's many KPIs. So it depends on where you look at and what you want to look and what you want to find, and what's kind of your goal, your business goal. But if you look at it at a macro level, you can start with is my advertising QoE quality good or not so good? And there's many different models, but probably you want to add most value to kind of represent what the quality is for your advertising. So that's the first kind of summary. You're able to summarize the data into a single number, and you can start drilling down into that number across dimensions. So that's kind of the first kind of stage, the high-level stage, the summary stage. If you go down, one level down, there's a lot of metrics. Video start time, buffering, we talked about that, but also, video start failures. What are the error codes? Video playback failures, even more important. Why did the browser crash in the middle of my ad? And not only, understanding the number on those, but also understanding the error code. Where is it coming from? And when you understand that, also be able to collect all the metadata associated with that. So that's very, very critical. There's another aspect on advertising, which is what at Conviva we call the ad funnel, which is everything that happens before the playback. Some ad requests, ad response, very, very tricky to handle, because just the nature of how VAST works, and understanding what was planned and what was not planned. So there's different levels, in terms of KPIs that you need to measure, from a macro level index to, more granular data, all the way down to the individual viewer and the impact on that individual viewer. Was the quality so poor that this individual may want to churn, and so there you need to go back down to what we call the session level, which is down to the individual level or the individual video session level. So I think the question here is multi levels. There's multi levels. One, depending on what type of KPI you need to track. Do you want to have a summary, a high level view? Do you want to drill down? And then if you want to drill down, in which KPI do you need to drill down? And you need to be able to drill down all the way down to the video session.
From an Adobe perspective, what we're doing with video analytics is, I think this is similar, but we're also looking at what's the context as it relates to the whole experience. So as an example, if you had a certain drop-off in a certain area of your experience, is it maybe related to a poor video performance or basically a poor ad performance? So I think this is also really crucial, because it gives a marketer the context of the impact of advertisement to overall performance, and then also allow them to really pin it down to potentially advertisement quality challenges too. So I think there's definitely I think understanding the data around advertisement, but also putting it into context of the overall experience, and allowing people to see this from a larger data footprint. I think these are things that are really important too for media companies.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more on the context thing, and that also relates to when we look at things like bit rate, because not today when you have like context-aware encoding, you don't really know what the expected. If you don't know what the expected bit rate is, or what your target bit rate is, how do you know that bit rate X is actually good or bad? It's always dependent on the context and where that ad is being viewed. Is it we see more and more floating players or mini players that are constantly on the page, and those are probably just by design typically going to be using lower bit rates. So is that considered good quality as much as a larger bit rate or high bit rate than a large player? There are a lot of things to keep in mind when we're looking at it. We can't only focus on hard numbers at all times. They always need to be related to the context that they're living in. The same when you're looking at devices, etc. Like, you need to be able to look at this data and slice and dice it to dive into the data using different factors such as location. For example, if you're servicing Countries in the Middle East, they have other expectations than countries in Northern Europe or in the US, for example. So that's also important to remember when we're looking at all these numbers, that they're always, there's a context around them they live in.
Morad, do you have any thoughts on this topic, sort of, from a content publisher perspective? What does Sky measure about video ad quality?
Well, yeah, I mean, apart from, we love this data as well, buffering, but the biggest one to us, I think, is dropouts essentially as well. I mean, our challenges is interruptions as well. So like I said at the beginning of this, what we want to measure is actually if a video play went beyond the ad. So in the event of an error, and let's face it, these things happen all the time, when something along the chain fails, as I said at the beginning of this conversation, we don't want the main viewing event to be interrupted. So what we have to understand is basically if an ad is preventing the main video asset from playing. That's the biggest goal here. So we put in a lot of effort here as well. We even do measures behind the scenes to actually prevent this failure from interrupting as well. So it's basically, did the ad play? Great. But more importantly, did the main asset actually in the whole session continue as well? So that's what we're trying to measure, because we really can't tolerate interruptions, because the great thing, we love the ad to play because we get paid for it, of course. That counts as an impression. But like I said before, if it interrupts the main viewing experience, and that's when we start feeling it as well. So we collect a lot of matrix of timeouts on the devices as well. So we will actually look at the percentage of timeouts during video play to see if something happened there. We also try and actually treat ads as much as we treat the long form, but we're getting better. We're getting better and better. I mean, like I said before, when people start calling up and complaining, then we have an issue, and then we go resolve it.
All right. So thinking a little bit about implementation of video ads, actually it's just one of the questions that the audience has already posed, around sort of ad stitching versus client-side implementations. I kind of termed it client-side versus server-side ad insertion. What are some of the best practices around doing this? What's the better solution? Is it stitching ads on the server? Is it just doing client-side implementations? What do you guys feel about the best way to deliver video ads in a stream?
Can I talk about the user cases first, guys, before we talk about the best way? Because, I mean, you've got to do one or the other depending on the user case. I mean, so, for example, if you can split live and VOD for a second. Now, live is a beast in itself, because what we want to do is that while someone's watching a live program, we want to basically try and dynamically add ads on the fly, as in real time, to address real-time campaigns as well. So that's one user case. When VOD, as we all know, a user has actually clicked on a particular item, and there's no, a movie, for example, and there's no traditional ad breaks, is there? So I'm going to, if you could split live and VOD for a second, that would be great, and then I can add my bit at the end. But I would say, just to start with, that client-side implementations, you get a lot more data, which is great, and generally they're a lot easier to deploy as well. When server-side attestation gets a lot more complex, and that's where the challenges we face as well, is basically, especially with live, is how do you make sure that when you are inserting ads into a live stream, that it doesn't destroy the live stream experience. So I would say that server-side, we get less data, but we get the advantages of actually monetizing a live channel. We're talking about OTT here, especially, which is great because that's a new revenue stream. So that's where we really talk about this. But then there's times, even with that model, we do client-side or server-side when we have to, as well. So it's a challenge. It depends on the user case and the device, really, because in some devices, we don't have the ability to do client ad stitching for live sources, for example, in a pay TV environment. We're restricted by the client, where we're forced to do server-side. So it's not always a question which we prefer. It's a question of which user case we're actually doing and what we can, because as the guy said, and I said, that it's a very fragmented market out there, and some features on one device may not be available on others. So we always have to do what's best for the proposition or the device, really, to make it happen, really. And they all have their challenges.
I think there might be even another angle to this question. So, you know, what is better, ad insertion using IAB standards versus, you know, custom libraries, right? Because this, I think on the client side, you know, it could be, you know, how do I run just, you know, my standard fast ad and make sure that the stitching experience is as good as server side. You know, that could be one way of, you know, setting, you know, sort of a goal, you know, to execute well on client side. But I think client side can flip very quickly into a very complex scenario when you start loading in different libraries from different specialized advertisement vendors and then not following the standardization. So we've seen definitely a lot of very complex client implementations that, you know, once you reach a certain amount of complexity, the error rates just go up and it becomes really hard to track those down. So let's say, you know, there's one provider for overlays and one provider for this new interactive ad unit that's not VPAID compliant. So I think this should be sort of the push towards, no matter what approach you use, you're using standard interfaces, and even if you lose a little bit flexibility, but at least you have some sort of a control over the experience.
Totally agree with you there, that people bung so much inside players that actually destroy and slowly grind to a halt. I totally agree.
Yeah, I agree with what was said here. I mean, the answer to the question, it depends. It depends, and because you know server side has advantages, advantages for ad blocking, and probably the QoE is slightly better. But then it creates new issues, which is measurement challenges and new issues. So it really depends on what is the primary goal. Although I think there is definitely a big trend for the industry to move to server side. We're seeing a lot of publishers moving to server side, especially on mobile.
All right.
Yeah,
so it sounds like what you guys are saying is that there's not a quick and easy silver bullet to this problem, like let's deliver ads always this way. In terms of providing the best kind of video ad quality experience. So that makes sense. So let's take that a step further though, because obviously implementation has a lot to do with this next question. What are the best ways to handle video ad interruptions? Obviously that's an aspect of the video advertising quality experience, right? So if the ad stops working, whether it's at the beginning of the ad, the middle, or the end of it, that's going to cause issues in the quality of experience of the stream that people are watching. So how do you handle video ad interruptions? What are the options?
I'll start where we normally put, as I mentioned before, what we try and do is actually make sure that a concept of circuit breakers are put inside our clients as well as actual client-side implementations as well. And what that basically means is that if the application on the client detects that an ad isn't playing after a given time, we then skip the advert entirely. We stop the call to action for playing the ad and then proceed to the main program. So that's one step, because what we all hate is that spinning black of, well, I'm going to say death, I know it's a bit bleak, appearing before the user, because then they think there's a problem with the whole service when actually it could be one component. Because the thing is, ad campaigns are normally delivered from an entirely different system, relying on third parties on different servers, and it goes on and on and on. It's like a cascading effect, really. So we don't always have full control of that. So what we tend to do is, if there's a fault and if an ad's not playing, for example, we put it, the functionality, and then proceed to the main thing. And we also put that behind some smarts where we can disable ads if we need to, and that's the key thing, because we can disable it when we have to if we do see a problem with the service as well. And just to give you another idea, I mean, there's little things like people love chucking massive, ginormous MP4 files, and especially in the Middle East, for example, pure example, where bandwidth constraints are quite small on low broadband connections. And what happens is that we get a timeout simply because the video asset is too big. It's basically taking too long to load, and it results in a timeout. So this is why we're kind of encouraging people to move to ABR video, to multi-bit video, because it will prevent such things, so that we get an instant startup, as well. We don't have to wait for buffering a 2 megabyte video file, which is what we did back in the days in 1995 with video streaming when it first erupted. So that's what we kind of do on the client. So that's how we avoid some interruptions as well, is basically putting circuit breakers in the applications and being able to disable ads if we have a fault as well. So those are the two main areas we try and resolve with. Live and dynamic ad insertion is a bigger challenge when in the live stream, because we're reliant on flags from broadcast systems. Now, when you start tying in broadcast systems inside live OTT systems, that's when the complexity grows tenfold as well, because you're talking to one set of standards and methods of actually scheduling ads in one particular environment, which is a bit older, to a new one. So then we put in a lot more monitoring in place as well. So we even put monitoring in the player, we put monitoring on across every point of our chain. So when we start seeing a fault, we can then react to it and start changing it and disable the ad functionality. And then that's the key as well, because you have to react, and the only way you can react is if you have data and that you have a sufficient monitoring in place as well. So that's how we try and not prevent all ad interruptions, but at least prevent ad interruptions before it explodes in our audience face.
Yeah, I think from a live perspective, obviously, you only have a very short window to react. So I think what you mentioned, sort of, instantly reacting when something goes wrong, I think is key here. So you don't have, 3 seconds even to analyze data, report it. Like, it has to happen right away. One of the strategies we've been pushing, or we've been seeing deployed, obviously, is also do some curation between, again, the ad providers and the experience. So having transcoding done dynamically, having failovers basically before it actually hits the player. I think that's an alternative also to prevent those, and basically do pre-processing of inventories, especially for live events. So you eliminate a lot of those variables. So use IAB standards, pre-processing of ads, and eliminate any kind of sort of programmatic sources that could potentially break your experience. I think doing this for live, I fully agree. This is a lot more harder because you don't have the ability to for this to fail. It has to work, right? So
live really requires real-time capability, because you need to move back to the content. You need to be able to have the switch to revert back to to the content if the event of the service is broken. And I think there's also the break and close. How long do you wait? And how fast do you get alerted? Those things are critical, because the reaction time here is split seconds. You can't wait 3 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You may be losing, especially on live events, you may be losing a lot of audience if that's the case.
All right. Going back a little bit to a question we asked earlier, which was around measurement and KPIs. One of the things that I hear a lot about is ad viewability. And it's sort of, what constitutes an ad view, right? Is it when the ad starts to play? Is it when the ad's gone 5 seconds? Is it when the ad's gone 10 seconds? And then fold quality into that, right? So if you're watching an ad that's really bad quality, like it's really a lot of artifacting or really bad bit rate, and you can't really see things that are in the ad, does that constitute an ad view, from the publisher perspective? So I'm just kind of curious as to what you guys think about that, what your opinions are on viewability and counting ad views.
Yeah, I think Moat has done a great job on that, of course, with a Moat score and so on. And there's a lot of, as you point out, there are a lot of different factors at play, because especially when you look at when you start looking at, you compare bit rates and buffer ratio. So is it better to have a higher bit rate even though you get some buffering? I mean, that's crucial. But in order to compare it, you need some metrics that we all agree on. So I think this is a great area that we probably need to dig even deeper into, because as I was talking about earlier about the floating players, like even though you might have it might be like great quality for the size of the player, if the player is tiny and that type of ad, the creative there relies on it being played in a bigger player, then of course is it as good a quality as something else? I think the important thing is to have some goals for when you think that your message, that for the advertiser, when do they feel like their message has been portrayed to the audience? Is it 75%, 50%? Of course, this goes back to also them being, the advertisers being conscious of the fact that they only have limited amount of time. So getting their message across in the first 5-10 seconds is crucial when it comes to online video, online ads, right?
Absolutely. Anybody else have anything to add to that?
I mean, viewability is very much linked to, the proof and the verification and what advertisers are willing to pay based on what metric. So, the MRC, for instance, as an opinion on the subject, 50% of the pixel in the last at least 2 seconds. Group M as another view, and I think other advertisers have expressed their opinion there. I think the critical item here is that it must be measured and it must be accurate. Then what is the metric and how is the money exchanged between the publisher and the advertiser is really a negotiation. There's a negotiation between those entities. But the most, at least from a Conviva standpoint, the most critical is to be able to measure that and to be able to have very granular and detailed data in order for the publisher to back up their claim.
All right. So why don't we have about 10 minutes left in the webinar, and I thought it would be great to turn to some of the questions that have been posed by the audience. And there was an interesting question, and it's actually I'm actually going to ask this question, and then I'm going to add a comment that comes from another audience participant about this question after you guys have had a chance to answer it. But the question that was posed is, do you see a future for VPaid?
Ooh,
very good question.
What's it?
Yeah, that's it.
I mean, is it going anywhere soon? I mean, I can't see it disappearing overnight. that's my in the future. Ooh, that's a good one. I mean, it's quite fragmented out there. I don't know. If you don't have VPaid, what are you going to use? Yeah.
So that, funny enough, that's the comment that came in from, we have a gentleman with IAD Tech Labs that's listening in, and he actually says that BAST4 takes care of a lot of the issues that we've been discussing around VPaid. So perhaps, maybe that should be an enhanced question, is do you feel that BAST4 will provide the replacement to VPaid that everyone is looking for?
Good question. I mean, the proof's in the pudding, isn't it? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, on paper it sounds great, and I hope it is well. But it's from what I've heard about VAST4, is looking good. It's trying to harmonize some stuff, at least on the client side as well. So that's impressive as well. From our point of view, I think that the proof's in the pudding, really. And once we get our hands on it and start deploying it, then yeah, we could take it from there, really. But yeah, fingers crossed is what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And my apologies. It's not a replacement. It's it fixes a lot of the issues with VPaid. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the I think the question is it depends. A lot of the measurements capability today rely on VPaid, but it depends on where you're doing the measurement. If you're doing the measurement at the player level, you're not so reliant on VPaid. That said, VAST4 is a great standard. For us, at least, from a Conviva perspective, we based our ad insight solution on VAST4, and we hope there's going to be an adoption here because, as it was said by the panel here, it does solve a lot of issues, and it does introduce a number of items that are great, including ad IDs and reinforcing ad IDs.
Yeah, I have the feeling that the VPaid scenario was better in the good old Flash days, but I think the JavaScript scenario we've seen definitely a lot more variance in terms of how it could interrupt the rest of the player experience. So I think that hopefully with VAST4, if that can address some of those things, I think that would be very important. I think for the industry, while we obviously we from a operational standpoint, we like simple video ads and standardized measurement. Obviously the higher CPM rates you get with VPaid is pretty critical from a business perspective, and so you're sort of caught always in the middle between obviously business wants to have higher value ads and more interactive ads, and you obviously from a video ops perspective you want to keep the experience really high, and you're sort of always caught in the middle between those two fronts. And I think the having if IAB and VAST4 can address some of that, I think it would be really important. And obviously we also want to make sure that the advertising space keeps evolving. Obviously there's the rise of ad blocking. It keeps getting more and more, and obviously you can address it by with server-side ad insertion and some of the techniques. But ideally, the industry moves to a position where advertising becomes a lot more user-friendly and maybe more accepted overall. So stopping sort of the innovation with VPaid probably would be a mistake. So I'm looking forward to see how VAST4 and the IAB can address some of those challenges.
All right. One of the questions that was posed is very interesting in that it proposes a name for something that we've been discussing, which is quality of advertisement or quality of advertising. So he termed it sort of QOA. I've never heard of that, so I'm just gonna give this participant complete and utter credit for coming up with a new term. But I actually want to put that out to you guys. Is measuring video ad quality just the same thing as measuring video quality? Are there any differences, or is it really just one video next to another?
So I can kick off. So Olivier from Conviva. So there is a baseline that is similar between the two, or even identical. But there's a number of things that are very different because what we've discussed prior, because of the complexity of the advertising ecosystem and how ads are being delivered. And an area where there is those kind of critical differences is what we call the ad funnel. How was the ad requested? What is the daisy chain there that's going on? Did anybody drop the ball? How did the ad response come back? So there is quite a lot of difference because that kind of techniques don't really exist on the content side, and you need to be, in our view, you need to be able to capture that in order to fully understand the QoE of advertising. So there are areas that are similar, VST, video start time, buffering, the kind of the traditional playback metrics, but there are other events and metrics that are different because you're trying to identify quality of the experience issues that whose origin may be very different than on the content side. And I think programmatic does add even an additional layer that's even more complex than on the content side. So it's there are common grounds, but there's also areas where advertising requires a lot more skills and systems that are a lot more advanced.
Yeah, I would agree. It's like You have to add a lot more, wouldn't you? I mean, today with traditional video QE, we have all these great metrics, but I think we have to deal with the application above the video itself as well that handles all this chatter between the players and the actual applications as well. You know, we don't actually score with QA video today against, you know, actually, are we getting the response times back from our ad partners? Where did they actually give what was spec'd? Was it the right campaign and so forth? So it seems like we have to add more to our MOS scores today, really, essentially, around application. And, you know, that's a challenge in itself because, yeah, because where do you begin, where do you end, really? Because it's different for everybody. But I would like to see something necessary out of the video chain and to more the interfaces where it actually makes an ad play, definitely including any sort of metric. I mean, if that's a reliability score on top of it all, I'm not sure, but there needs to be something, I think, definitely.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. The main difference is technical, that there's a lot more to ad delivery. As you point out, a lot of stuff happening before the ad even starts. So there are a lot of additional data points to collect, but also when we're looking at this, there's a different goal with the ads as well. I mean, of course, we want them to be successful. We want them to play. It's important that they play with good quality, but there's also an underlying goal of the advertising ad itself. It's either it's going to lead to increased brand awareness for the advertiser, or it's going to lead to some conversion or call to action. So ideally, in the long run, those two need to also be achieved. Otherwise, the advertisers aren't going to be willing to invest the money in video advertising. So we also need to measure the engagement and how successful the ads are, and be able to understand what type of ads are more successful than others. So in addition to understanding the whole technical aspects of things, it's also understanding how these different metrics affect engagement of the users. So taking a step back and looking at the overall experience for the whole video experience, maybe taking a step back outside of the player itself, even before the video, before the user even starts engaging with the video player. And yeah.
Great. All right, listen, we've got just a couple of minutes left, and I thought that to finish off the webinar, we would have just kind of a little fun question. This kind of has something to do with, you know, viewability and quality and whatnot, but it's very controversial. And all I want you to do is just say the first thing that comes to mind. Don't think about it. We'll start off with Olivier, and we'll go then to Jens, to Jesper, and to Morad. So the question is, what's the optimal length for a video ad? Olivier.
I'm going to give you a poor response, Jason, but it depends. And then I'll tell you why it depends. It depends, and we've tested that. So we've tested that quite a bit. You know, we could, and then the measure that we were looking at is, you know, what was the abandonment level? And we know the abandonment level, the ad abandonment level is around at 12.5% globally, you know. But a lot of things, you know, can change. It can change, you know, depending if you're a pre-roll, if you're a mid-roll, where are you in the mid-roll, post-roll. It depends also on the type of content, because we've seen content that is extremely sticky, that, you know, especially documentary type of content, kind of educational, they could have, you know, 3-4% abandonment. So it really, so that's why I'm coming down. It depends, you know, if it's 30 seconds, 15 seconds, 60 seconds, where is it, how is it being displayed, and, you know, what's the quality, what's the type of content. So there's a lot of factors there that will influence. For instance, I'll give you, and I'll finish enough on that. We've noticed that one of our customer publisher had a very high abandonment level, and they've switched it to be the pre-roll to be about 3 minutes in, and that completely dropped. And the reason was, you know, people, when they watch 3 minutes, they're already engaged, they're already committed, so they're not going to drop. So, you know, there, by not changing the length, it's still 30 seconds, but just changing the position, then you're able to optimize your viewership. So yes, the response is it depends.
It depends. Okay, Jens, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think obviously, we can't treat ads without, the intent of the advertisers. So I think part of that is, a 45-second ad could be, achieved, very positively if the content itself, matches the content, if it, matches the audience, right? So relevant advertisement could, if it's targeted, could be a lot more friendly than, let's say, a 15-second ad that is untargeted and is not relevant. So I think there's a couple of more dimensions to that than simply saying, okay, 5 seconds is best, or 15 seconds is best, or 30 seconds. But I think it's the applicability of the advertisement should be a factor too. So probably say if it's not targeted, not relevant, 5 seconds might already be too long. If it's completely tailored and in context of the sentiment of the video and the experience, then 45-second ad break, timed at the right time. Let's say doing a break during a live event might be very positive. So I think there's definitely, I think this is a very good question. I think there's different angles to look at this, and probably it depends. But I think it also depends on in context of the audience and actually the content and the intent of the advertiser.
Okay, Jesper, anything to add?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have to agree with the previous speakers here. It all depends, and like they said, pre-rolls versus mid-rolls. Mid-rolls we see a lot more engagement with mid-rolls and less drop-offs. I mean, drastically less. But then also there's a huge difference between VOD and live as well. And also when it comes to devices, we were looking at one of our clients, and we could tell that their audience, you could lose 50% more views or on smartphones than you did on PCs for the similar length ad. And even worse, if you go and look at those smartphones, you'd lose actually 4 times more ads or viewers on iOS than you would on Samsung compared to iOS. So you'd lose 4 times as many viewers on Samsung devices over iOS devices. Same length ads. So it really comes down to the audience, the device, the content, the type of if it's VOD or live, etc. So there's a lot of things at play. But the only way to figure out what works is to be able to measure it.
Sure, exactly. And then Morad, anything to add to this? Finish us off?
Yeah, I'm just going to keep it really simple. As long as my audience can stand it, let's put it simple. If I could get, let's be honest. If I'm a guy at home, if I'm a user, I'd like it to be as short as possible. But as a publisher, I like to get away with as long as I can handle it without alienating them from what they came to watch in the first place. So let's put it that way. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, listen, I just want to say thank you to our panelists. They did a fantastic job. It was a great discussion. I want to say thank you to all of our attendees, especially those who stuck around as we ran a little bit long. But again, this will all be recorded, and once the recording's done, we'll get it out to everybody so we can share it on social media and whatnot. But again, thank you, everyone, for your time, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon, and everyone take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.